Welcome back to Tracy Take Tuesday. My name's Tyler here with my brother Ryan. If you're watching this, you are realizing it's obviously not Tuesday. We had to take a 1 day delay because I was sick over the weekend. So I appreciate everybody's patience. And just as like a quick word of announcement, Pedialyte is an amazing friend for a quick recovery. Just saying. So with that being said, Tracy Take Tuesday, we do a mock draft every Tuesday, mainly on Tuesday. Between now and the 2025 NFL Draft, Ryan will be doing his sixth mock draft here. And so we're going to break it down. It's been fun too because Senior Bowl just started. The Shrine Bowl also had some of their events as well. So it's going to be a fun couple of weeks here now, kind of reviewing the mock draft, especially too as we get into combine season. But before we get into that, if you like the content that Ryan and I put out and you want to help the Tracy Take channel grow, the easiest way is by hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell to get notified when new videos come out. And while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see your team do in this upcoming draft. And Ryan, let's get into it.
Let's get into it here. Quick disclaimer: Pedialyte is great recovery for illnesses.
Yes.
You left that part out. It is great for other recoveries, but you are referencing illnesses.
Illnesses. Yes. I don't
Yeah,
know. Honestly, I had so much of it. It just felt amazing. And so, but
yeah,
I also felt like death. So anything would have felt amazing after that.
yeah. No, and honestly, it's a good little tool to have. But let's get into this mock draft here. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach here. So kicking things off with the Tennessee Titans, I have had them take Cam Ward every single time. It feels like that they've been number one. And it's been really interesting kind of watching the Titans navigate this offseason process. They moved on from Rand Carthon and brought in a new GM who laid out a very interesting quote. And people were asking him that if he was going to draft a quarterback or trade the first overall pick. And he kind of responded back with it's hard to pass up blue chip talent. And for me, that just screams they're going to go best player available. And for me, the best player on the board is Travis Hunter. Cornerback is a little bit of a need for them. They do need playmakers on the offensive side of the ball as well. And so I think he is a phenomenal pick here at number one. Yes, the Titans need a quarterback. This isn't a strong quarterback class. And with that recent quote from the general manager, I would find it hard pressed to believe that there's not some questions about whether they will invest highly in a quarterback in this draft. Maybe they are one of the Sam Darnold landing spots this offseason. But all in all, I think it's just going to be a really interesting draft process to kind of see where these quarterbacks land and if these teams are going to place them over the few blue chip talent that is at the top of this class. Speaking of blue chip talent going at the top of this draft, I'm going to have Abdul Carter go here at number 2. He's just the best player on the board. I can't just like explain enough. I think his ceiling is the best pass rusher in the league. He has been an edge rusher for one season and just looks phenomenal. And his football IQ, his play speed, his play strength, it's all really good. He needs some work in some run fits, but all in all, just a really, really talented football player here going to the Cleveland Browns. So really interesting spot. Both of the top 2 teams pass on quarterback. I do feel like this is a realistic situation given a lot of the questions that are going on about the top 2 quarterbacks in this class. And so I just kind of want to get your thoughts on those first 2 picks.
No, it absolutely is a very realistic scenario here as well, especially as we've watched Abdul Carter play in the college football playoff, especially too. We've known obviously how great Travis Hunter is as well. Like one of the most unique prospects we've seen. Well, shoot, in a really long time. I don't think there's been a prospect like him in a really long time. I mean, maybe Jabril Peppers, but even then at that point, like nothing,
Mhm.
nowhere near to the level that Travis Hunter is at. And I say that name very loosely. Like I'm trying to even think if there's other names, but I
Yeah.
can absolutely see this if like obviously like Titans are not going to want to stick with Will Levis. The Browns are not going to stick with Deshaun Watson, but it's a very unique also QB free agency class as well, to where maybe they can get some guys cheaply and just kick the can down the road. It's like can Cam Ward and Shador Sanders in the right situation lead a team to the playoffs? Yes, but if we're being honest, like do we expect them? Do they have this like generational hype around them, like how the last quarterback class did? Like absolutely not. So it's
Yeah.
the only one where the verdict is kind of still out in last year's class. I mean, Penix still has some I'd say like still some tests to be had on how great he can be, but he's probably going to be our franchise quarterback down here in Atlanta. JJ McCarthy has the most questions, because we haven't seen him play yet. But that being said, though, I really trust Kevin O'Connell, Minnesota Vikings, and the team that they have around him to be successful. So with these teams here right now, I don't think they're really built yet to go draft their quarterback for the future.
Yeah.
And so if they want to just keep building and try and build a better team, make a better scenario for a younger quarterback that comes in, I totally get it.
Yeah, and I especially too, I think looking at this situation, do you want to take a developmental quarterback prospect that has traits to be a first round pick, and then thrust him into these situations where he will more than likely have a lot of other issues. He probably will be thrusted into a starting position before he is ready. And I think that you decide against that and go with the best players available. So here at number 3, this is where I will have Cam Ward come off the board. This is the point. Like, those are my top 2 prospects, and to me, there's a clear difference between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, and then a lot of the other prospects that are on the board. And this is where I think the positional value of quarterback, and you take that chance, just because those 2, in my opinion, generational prospects go off the board. You have some other like really talented prospects there with Mason Graham, Will Johnson, Will Campbell, Tet McMillan, but you need a quarterback, and I think Cam Ward with Brian Daboll is going to be a really good fit. They don't play similarly, but I look at what Brian Daboll was able to do with a lot of the issues that Josh Allen had. Cam Ward has a lot of similar issues, and I think that Brian Daboll will be able to work some of those issues out of him and potentially save him and Joe Shane's job up there in New York. So here, I'm actually going to have New England trade back. Shocking if you follow this channel at all. I feel like New England is a very common trade back spot, but you do have Shedeur Sanders fall. And I think there are a few teams that could potentially trade up. Not saying that New England would trade with the New York Jets to give them a quarterback of the future, but the Jets are probably looking to trade up. The Raiders are looking to trade up. The Saints could be a sneaky team that are looking to trade up as well. And so I feel like this is the spot where teams are going to try to look up to grab the quarterback that falls. So I'm going to go with the Las Vegas Raiders. There's just a lot of ties there with Shedeur Sanders. So I actually gave up 6 and 73 for pick 4. They have an extra third, so they have the capital to go up and make this move. But we're going to go ahead and force that trade there. And the Raiders will get their franchise quarterback there in Shedeur Sanders. Really quick, I'm going to go with Will Campbell here, the offensive lineman out of LSU. He's going to come in at sub 33-inch arms, especially after the measurements of the Senior Bowl have kind of gone out. And we've seen like Wyatt Milam came out with 32.25-inch arms. And so he's definitely going to kick into the interior. But I almost think you're drafting Will Campbell at this point on leadership qualities as a whole. The dude has like the Mamba mentality that you want your offensive lineman to have. He is a dog in the middle, and he's not going to get outcompeted by anybody. And I think when you're looking at this offense and wanting to protect Trevor Lawrence, I think this is the guy that can come in. He's going to be a Pro Bowl, all pro caliber guard, and he's going to be the tone setter for your offensive line. So just off of those 3 picks, 2 quarterbacks and Will Campbell go. Curious what you think.
So I will say, like, probably dream scenario for both the Giants and the Raiders here, and the Patriots too.
Yeah.
I would say, like, with quarterbacks falling, I could see them doing that. I could also see Shedeur going to New York. I think just with his accuracy and to me, I feel like his ability, his vision, and his decision making capabilities, and with somebody the talent of Malik Neighbors, I think they would do extremely well. But I could also say the same thing though with Shedeur Sanders and then Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
So I think that's I think 2 great picks here. And then another thing that too with Will Campbell, now with Liam Cohen being the head coach, I think one of the great things about getting Will Campbell here now is if you go look at that Buccaneers offense this past year, they had one of the top rushing offenses in the league. And they drafted some young guys as well that were able to kick in. Graham Barton, for example, Cody Mock the year before that. I'm pretty sure it was the year before that or 2 years before. Either way, though, really beefed up that interior, just addressed that offensive line. And you go look at Jacksonville now, and I still think Trevor Lawrence, he's obviously their franchise QB. I think he's one of the better QBs in the league. But I'd say average to above average. I don't know if he's been in the best situation, but you got Travis
Mhm.
Etienne, Tank Bigsby in the backfield. Obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. I think is going to be a stud. I could really look to see this offense picking up here if they're able to address a lot of their offensive line woes. So I really like this pickup
Mhm.
here with Will Campbell.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good fit for Will Campbell as well with that Liam Cohn running game and being able to utilize his athleticism. So next up, New England Patriots. This is a pick that I have slightly criticized, I think, a little bit in the past, but they move back. They acquire a little bit more draft capital. So I'm going to go with Tet McMillan. You could go with Kelvin Banks or maybe the top edge rusher on the board, but James Pierce Jr., Mike Green, Nick Scorton. The first two guys are a little undersized. Nick Scorton is a little inexperienced and he's been really good and he will be going in this first round. But I feel like if you go, you get Tet McMillan, that's a really good compliment. You have Josh McDaniels coming back who likes to run with like a true X jump ball receiver there. Tet McMillan is very good at that, as well as many other things. He's a very smooth route runner, especially at first 6'5", 210. And so I think that's going to be a good fit there. The Jets are still an interesting spot. So with Aaron Glenn now becoming the head coach, I am curious to kind of see like if DJ Reed is retained in free agency. I have a feeling they're going to want to put a priority on retaining key contributors. I don't know their cap space situation off the top of my head, but I would go Will Johnson here if DJ Reed was definitely not coming back, but I'm gonna go Mason Graham, pair him up with Quinnen Williams, and that's just going to be one of the best, if not the best, defensive line in the NFL right now. You have him, Jermaine Johnson should be coming back off injury. You have Will McDonald as well. They're playing out in that wide nine, putting a lot of pressure on tackles. So I'm going to go with Mason Graham there as well. This is where I have Will Johnson coming off the board. It's not the biggest need, but I think when you look, a lot of the defensive interior guys are off the board. Derek Brown should be coming back from injury, hopefully at 100% for them. But Will Johnson is going to go here to the Carolina Panthers. Just a really solid corner. He missed most of the 2024 season with a foot injury or a toe injury. And so hopefully that can be all healed up and he can have an offseason process and show teams through physicals and also combine and pro day workouts that he's fully healthy and ready to go. But he would be picked much higher, like top 3 in this class if he had played this year fully. But instead, I think Carolina gets good value there at pick number 8. Next up here, the New Orleans Saints. A little bit of a different route here, but I really think that New Orleans needs more playmakers. Alvin Kamara is getting older. Kendre Miller stepped in okay, but you can definitely see the clear difference in talent between Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller. Chris Olave is a very good wide receiver. He can't do it all by himself, and so I'm going to go get him a running mate here in Luther Burden. I went back and watched him a little bit more this season, and Guy is just electric with the ball in his hands. Chris Olave can be your nuanced route runner and kind of be your deep threat, where Luther Burden is going to get the ball in his hands closer to the line of scrimmage and really make some teams pay for putting him in single coverage there as well. So I like Luther Burden. There's going to be some fun things that they can do with him, and I just think that that's a really solid fit. And then lastly, to kind of round out the top 10, Ashton Jeanty is going to go here to the Chicago Bears. It's not the biggest need. I think they definitely need to address other things. But I think when you look at some of the offensive linemen at this point, there's questions of whether they're tackles, they're guards. It's going to be interesting to see edge rusher wise if they want to go with the James Pierce Jr. But Ashton Jeanty is a blue chip running back. He is in that Bijan Robinson tier of prospect. So to get him here at 10, I think is really good value. To me, he's a little bit of a mix between Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs, the last couple first round running backs, and they went 8 and 12, and so Ashton Jeanty goes right here in the middle at number 10. So I'm gonna stop here outside or with the top 10 and just kind of get your thoughts on the last couple picks.
Yeah, so back to your Patriots, Ted McMillan, I think makes sense to me, especially too if you guys get or don't get T. Higgins. You also need to increase the overall talent in the receiving room. And a guy like Ted McMillan,
Yeah.
you trade back and you even get a 3rd-round pick. Absolutely perfect. Mason Graham, Will Johnson, 2 electric defensive players from Michigan. I think they're going to do great with both of those teams here. Luther Burden, I like that to the Saints here as well. Especially too, if you don't really know the quarterback situation over this next couple of years, once again, just if you stick with Derek Carr and just wait for the future, or even two, I'd be kind of curious to see how Spencer Rattler does if
Yeah.
with whatever happens with Derek Carr post season, because I feel like he just didn't really get a fair shake because all the star players were not there. So just get
Yeah.
some more electric players there, and whoever the quarterback is, you're going to have a good talented team around him. And to me, then too, with the Bears, Ashton Genty, I mean, I just love that pick.
Yeah.
It's for Chicago here. They need to keep working on the offensive line, yes, but I also think too having a guy like Ashton Genty in that backfield, you're going to have Ben Johnson as well, being the coach there, and once again, very similar to Liam Cohen as well. But Ben Johnson's offense is established through the run.
Yeah.
It's so that when you had like you made the comparison to Jahmyr Gibbs as well, even he kind of fits that similar type mold as well, and he can catch the ball out
Yeah.
of the backfield. He can really open up this offense. So
Mhm.
I think that would be great for this offense here. Now that being said, it is Chicago, so probably there'll be some way that it won't work out for everybody. But maybe not.
Yeah. No, and I like especially those last two picks. I think like Ashton Genty is pretty scheme averse. If you want him to run between the tackles, he can. He can run outside the tackles. He can be a really solid third down back. And Luther Burden is very quarterback friendly. So whoever ends up being the quarterback in that Saints situation, I think will be he will be a good fit for them just because he can create for himself. So
Mm-hmm.
uh starting back up here with the San Francisco 49ers, we're going to go with James Pierce Jr. To go across from Nick Bosa. And for me, he's just the best player on the board at this point. And I really like what he's been able to do in the run game, especially given the fact that he's only like 242 pounds. And so I feel like at the NFL level, he's definitely going to need to add some weight to be as stout as he has been in the run game. But with being the size of an outside linebacker, he was playing with a hand in the dirt and playing against the run really well. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that is going to translate to the next level. Get some real speed on the other side of Nick Bosa and really kind of stress the pocket because they have some good interior pass rushers there, good linebackers that can blitz the A and B gaps. And so really stressing the outside of those tackles is just going to open up that pocket even more to get after it. So here with the Dallas Cowboys, one of my I guess turned into one of my guys in this draft class is Armand Mimbu, the right tackle from Missouri, guy that I came onto a little bit later in this process, but I don't usually bet on outliers when they're on the wrong side of the outlier. Like I was not a Bryce Young fan just because of his height. I don't usually bet on tackles that have less than 33-inch arms just because those guys like hardly ever make it. Armand Mimbu is 6'3.5", and that in itself is hard to stomach. However, he has 34-inch arms and he plays at 323 pounds. And in a way, maybe being that height gives him a little bit of a leverage advantage against some of these like taller edge rushers because they can't get under his pads nearly as easily, and he just has a really solid anchor. He can play guard if you need to kick him inside, but he has the athleticism and the power and the anchor to really be a solid tackle. So I think you have Tyler Guyton at left tackle, you have Tyler Smith at left guard. Zach Martin at right guard, or if he retires or doesn't come back to the team, I think Armand Mimbu is a plug and play starter there, or at right tackle. I think that would be a really interesting fit there as well. And they really need to improve that offensive line down there in Dallas. So going to go with Armand Mimbu here. Here with the Miami Dolphins, I'm going to go with Josh Simmons. He's a little bit of a riskier prospect just with that knee injury. We still don't really know the details of it. He struggled a little bit last year with his anchor. None of those problems were on tape in those first 5 games, but he had a really good half against Oregon, but this is much lesser competition than who was on the second half of Ohio State's schedule. I mean, they played Indiana for God's sake. So they gotta be, they had a really tough road there at the end. So going to be Josh Simmons here at number 13. Really athletic guy. I think he would do really well in their system. He also, I know they drafted Patrick Paul last year. He was a right tackle at Sacramento State before he transferred over to Ohio State. So he has that ability to play right tackle as well that you just don't see from a lot of these guys that have played both sides at a college level. So here with the Indianapolis Colts, I was going back and forth. The last like 2 or 3 mock drafts I've gone back and I looked, I picked Malachi Starks and Tyler Warren for the Colts here every single time. So I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I just want to apologize to you in advance as a Falcons fan. I am going to have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trade up in front of you. Going to offer pick 19 and 83 to get back pick 14. And they are going to select edge rusher Mike Green. And Mike Green has been phenomenal. He led the nation in sacks this past year with 17 and a half sacks. He's about 6'4", 248 pounds. Fits that Tampa Bay scheme, I think, really well. You get him across from Yaya Diaby. He's still a good enough run defender where he could potentially be there on 3 downs, especially as an outside linebacker. And with Vita Vea in the middle, it's not going to be nearly as much pressure put on him to be a run defender. So I'm going to go with Mike Green here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to really kind of enhance that pass rush. And the reason why I did that, and I was going to have the Falcons take Mike Green, but I know Tampa Bay, one of their biggest needs is just more consistent pass rush pressure. They have other needs on the back end of their defense as well, but those can potentially be addressed in free agency. The Falcons pass rush is one of their biggest things that I think that they need to go after. With Mike Green off the board, I don't have them going that route. I actually have them for the first time in my mock draft this season drafting Ben Morrison, the corner from Notre Dame. Really solid corner. I think he would be a really good complement on the other side of AJ Terrell. Both of those guys can mirror guys. They can play zone well. They can each take a half of the field and do a really good job there. That second corner spot, it's not a pressing need for the Falcons, but it is definitely an area where I think that they need to improve. And in a deep edge class, I think like for the Falcons, you guys could be looking at potentially going and getting an edge rusher like Shamar Stewart in the second round, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Donovan Ezaraku, if you want to stick with that outside linebacker mold. So there's a lot of different day 2 options for the Falcons here. And I also did think about trading back for the Falcons. I know that's what you probably want them to do since they don't have that 3rd round pick. There's just not a lot of teams that I see wanting to trade up at this point. You're kind of in the middle of a group of players in my eyes, and it's just kind of a tough spot, I think, for a lot of teams here where you might not love the player that you're picking, but there's not going to be a lot of teams that are going to be moving up to go and get guys in that range. So
yeah, no, that's what I've thought about as well. For the Falcons, and it's a very unique spot. Like with only having 4 picks, the first, second, fourth, and then the 7th. They might get some compensatory picks. Probably not though. And the thing I will say too, with I really like this Bucks trade as well. Because one, you get in front of your division rival, but also two, the Falcons, Cardinals, Bengals, and Seahawks all could legitimately take defensive line players. And if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and your primary focus is going to be defense, go and get like the guy that you want to go and get. And even too, the Colts, they potentially could go edge rusher here, and so I can maybe even see them trading back with Miami as well, who's going to have more offensive line focus needs and could get some more draft capital as well. So I really like that trade by Buccaneers, especially as a Falcons fan. It upsets me. But that even said, though, to Ben Morrison, I think too. I know he's coming off of the hip injury. I think this is great value. I mean, he was going to be a top 10 prospect at minimum.
Yeah.
If it was for the hip injury, and so. I think he's definitely worth the risk here, especially too. He'll be slotting in as the number 2 corner. That's a major need for our Falcons team. I know you said it's not the biggest need. Shows you how bad our pass rush is, but it is a pretty major need here with D. Alford, Mike Hughes not really hitting up the snout for having some other guys in the secondary as well hit free agency. So I think it's going to open some things up as well, and getting a strong secondary might actually help out our pass rush as well, because we'd be a little bit more aggressive with our linebackers, such as like with Caden Ellis. So all the other picks I like as well. 49ers taking James Pierce. I maybe am still holding out Armand Membu being a top 15 pick. I think he's good. I think he's been rising. I personally probably would have gone with Josh Simmons just because I think Josh Simmons, if it wasn't for the injury, is like Amon Membu like times two. He's a little bit bigger. He has the same athletic traits as well, but I think even more explosive. But the injury maybe could put a pause on that. And so, but I see them addressing the offensive line. I can see the Cowboys going in any direction outside the quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, and the other thing too, kind of behind the Armand Membu pick is Armand Membu, in my opinion, he definitely is a tackle, but he does have a lot more flexibility to kick into guard. Where Josh Simmons is a tackle, you're not really kicking Josh Simmons into an interior role,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So, getting back into it here with the Arizona Cardinals, I'm gonna go with Calvin Banks here. He's just the best player on the board. It's not an immediate need. I've also kind of remember going through this, and uh I've gone like Kenneth Grant, Tyleik Williams, like defensive interior. I feel like every single time for one of these for the Cardinals. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Calvin Banks, he can be that left tackle for you. He can kick into guard. He really could play four, maybe even five positions on an offensive line. And he's just a really good football player and has really good play strength. It's very rare for guys to be as young as him and be as stout at the point of attack as he is. So I think that's just a really good value pick there for Calvin Banks. Here with the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm going to go with Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. He just separated himself so much, in my opinion, with his ability to create with the ball in his hands. They utilized him in so many different ways at Penn State as a running back, as a true like wide tight end in line. They've kicked him out wide. They've run him in the wildcat. And I think you put him in that offense, and we'll have to see kind of what happens with the T. Higgins situation. But you put him in that offense, who knows what could happen? Seriously, I mean, that could be a phenomenal pick for them. And he also is a really solid run blocker as well. So I really like Tyler Warren. Seattle Seahawks. This is where I'm gonna have edge Nick Scorton come off the board. I'm a big Nick Scorton fan. He has fallen down a little bit for me, but it's more so that guys in the edge rush class have risen to be at or above the same level as him. And so he kind of falls down here to 18, but man, the dude is a monster. He has a wicked spin move, really good speed to power. He's stout in the run game, and he's only 20 years old, and he has a lot of room to grow. But I think you get him in that Mike McDonald system, and that's just a really, really solid fit for him to come in and be able to contribute right away in maybe more of a rotational role. But in 8 games to a full season, I think he'll be a 3-down edge rusher that is playing really, really good football. So I'm going to go with Nick Scorton here. And this was just too good a value here. The Colts trade down. They get an extra 3rd-round pick, and they still get Malachi Starks, who I think could really help the back end of that defense. I think that's just good drafting there by Chris Ballard. And this, I know a lot of people are up in arms about Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen being back there up in Indianapolis, but the biggest thing is I think people need to be more patient with Anthony Richardson. The tools are definitely there. Wait, what?
Oh, no, I was just coughing. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. But I think people need to be more patient with Anthony Richardson. The tools are definitely there. And while the product on the field hasn't necessarily been what you wanted, there's so much talent on this roster, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr., A.D. Mitchell, Josh Downs, Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson up there in the middle. Like, they've done a good job of drafting tackles later in the draft as well. And like, this team has so much talent on it. And so maybe I think you could make an argument more for Shane Steichen's job than Chris Ballard, but Chris Ballard has done a good job, I think, of drafting players. And that's like, to me, that he's done a good job of drafting players. So here, the Denver Broncos, another one that just seems to make sense. You look at their wide receiver room, Emeka Egbuka would fit in so well. They have their explosive playmaker in Marvin Mims. They have their true X and Cortland Sutton. They need that possession guy. And to me, Emeka Egbuka could be the one that stirs the pot up there in Denver. And so we're going to go with the wide receiver from Ohio State there. Take them right before the Pittsburgh Steelers do. Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get a really solid corner, though, in Jahdae Barron. Had a little bit of a rougher, like kind of football playoff, especially in that Ohio State game where he was matched up with, who's the big number 4? I forget his name.
And
Jeremiah Smith.
yeah,
He was matched up with him, but it was only in zone, and he was never in single coverage. To be fair, that's just a mismatch that you never want, like, to put a guy one-on-one in, especially like a prospect of that magnitude. And so John A. Barron, though, 2 seasons ago, really solid safety. Last season was a really good slot corner. This year, he moved out to play on the outside, and he was successful at all 3 levels. You have Joey Porter Jr. there. You have Minka Fitzpatrick. So you go get another versatile piece that can kind of plug in that secondary, and I think that part of the defense can do a better job of allowing this pass rush more time to get after the quarterback there. So get Jahdae Barron there at 21. Here at pick 22, we're going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers. And another one of my guys here, I'm going to go with Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. If Ashton Genty was not in this class, everybody would be talking about how good Omarion Hampton is. This guy is just ridiculous. I think he's 6 foot, 220. He bounces off tackles like he's made of rubber. He runs through guys like he's a wrecking ball. And he has enough speed to break long runs and really beat guys in foot races as well. So I really like that fit there for the Chargers. They want to be a tough, physical, run first team, and they go and get a home run hitter here in Omarion Hampton. A couple more picks here, and I'll throw it back over to you. Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go with Kyle Kennard, the edge rusher from South Carolina. He's not the most productive edge rusher in the sense of, like, his pass rush win rate is not at 20% or like what that elite level is, but you just go watch him on tape and the dude is just looks like a man amongst boys. And he is a little bit of an older prospect, but his physicality, he's decent enough in the run game where he's not a liability on early downs. I really think that he is going to be a riser throughout this draft process, and I just like what he brings to the table. So we're going to go with Kyle Kennard here for the Green Bay Packers. And then lastly, kind of before I throw it over to you, I'm going to have a trade here. So the Jacksonville Jaguars have a litany of picks, and the Minnesota Vikings do not. So I'm going to go throw pick 36 and pick 88 and throw in a 2026 round 4, just to kind of even out the points for pick 24 here to the Minnesota Vikings. So the Minnesota Vikings get a 3rd rounder this year, and they get a 4th rounder next year to move back 12 spots. And so we'll force that trade. This is actually where I'm going to have Kenneth Grant come off the board. There are just few men on this planet that are built like Kenneth Grant. And the Jaguars really need some interior depth. He brings good pass rush potential from a really big defensive tackle, but the dude is just a monster against the run. And that's one of the things that they really need down there in Jacksonville. And if they can have somebody like Kenneth Grant come in there and start plugging up the middle, imagine what those edge rushers could do if they don't have to worry about keep and contain on every single play. And so I think that's a really good fit. Maybe it's a little bit of a hefty price to come up and pay for a defensive tackle, but all in all, I think that the Jaguars come up and they get a really solid day one starter on that defensive interior.
Yeah, no, I'll start off with that pick, but I like the aggressiveness from Jacksonville, especially too with the extra picks that they have. But the biggest thing with that team is like just addressing the trenches, and I think kind of expanding off of that as well too is someone like with Kenneth Grant. I was saying, like, in my head the past couple of picks, like, is this where Kenneth Grant comes off? This is where Kenneth Grant comes off, just because he's such a good player, but also too, I think it just kind of goes to show the absolute depth that they have in this class. I can see Kyle Kennard making that rise if a team falls in love with him and he fits that scheme where he could end up being a 1st round pick. But at the same time, though, too, I could see him falling, or if we scroll up a little bit here, I could see some other potential guys falling as well, like Nick Scorton, who you had at 18. I could potentially see teams maybe not liking him nearly as much, or they're just other guys that they have that feel like they're a better fit, and then they go from there. So it's just going to be absolutely fascinating to see how these teams end up. Omar and Hampton, he's going to be another guy. Where does he end up falling? Because we're starting to get into his range. I think this is a high end for his range, going to 22, maybe 20 or 21 with Denver or Pittsburgh. But then I would be surprised if he gets past your Patriots with the second overall pick, because I think he'd be loved in New England as well. And there's even a couple other picks. There, Las Vegas, I think, would be another team in the early part of the second round that they might even want to trade up for him just because of how good he is. So
Yeah.
this class is going to be uniquely deep, as in there's not, as we've said a bunch throughout this offseason so far, not a bunch of blue chip prospects, but at the same time, though, too, just a lot of really good prospects. These are going to be guys that are going to help you win Super Bowls. You know, they might not be the face
Yeah.
of the franchises like last year's draft class, but a lot of these guys are going to help you win Super Bowls if they're put in the right situation.
Yeah. And that's kind of speaking to the Amari and Hampton pick as a whole. If you take positional value out of the equation, like he's a running back, this is also a really deep running back class. But and you just start stacking guys based on how good of football players they are. I'm convinced Amari Hampton is a top 10 to 12 guy
Yeah.
on that list. He's just so good at breaking tackles, falling forward, like doing the little things right. And then on top of that, he's a pretty good receiver out of the backfield. Not a lead or anything of like that, but he can catch out of the backfield. He can make guys miss in open space, and then he can also beat you in a foot race down the sideline. But uh as far as like the rest of the class goes, this is so like one of the things in 2022 that was tough to swallow was just like not only like were there not a lot of quarterbacks in that class, like there just weren't a lot of good talent in that class, like real high end elite talent. And I know like some names like Trent McDuffie have emerged out of that draft class. Aiden Hutchinson is another. But there is a lot of really good talent in this class. It's just not like there's no like Marvin Harrison Juniors or Malik Neighbors at receiver. There's no Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May at quarterback. There's not any of that talent at the like elite or like at like the sexy positions. But there's a lot of really solid edge rushers. There's a lot of really solid defensive interior guys. There are a lot of teams that are going to get better. It's just not going to be in the flashy ways. They're going to get a lot of guys, like you said, that are going to come in and do the dirty work to win Super Bowls and not necessarily be the face of the franchise. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead.
Like,
Let's get through these last few picks here. Gonna be a little bit slower as we get down and start making some trades, but here Houston Texans are not going to trade back. I'm going to have them go with Ohio State defensive lineman Tyleik Williams. They also need some help on that defensive interior. It got better as the season went on and actually looked pretty decent against like the Chiefs in the playoffs there. But with that being said, I still think it's an area for improvement. Similar to the Jaguars, you have those two elite edge rushers. So let's go ahead. Let's plug up the middle. Let's really let those guys pin their ears back and start getting upfield and not have to worry nearly as much about keeping contained, because you know that your defensive linemen are going to be very stout at the point of attack and not really get moved off the ball. So Tyleik Williams also has some pass rush upside as well. Maybe not quite as much as Kenneth Grant, but he's probably equally as stout in the run game. So here we are going to go with Josh Connerly Jr., the athletic tackle out of Oregon. He came in with 34-inch arms and was about 313 pounds at the Senior Bowl. So definitely has the measurables to play tackle. His biggest thing is his play strength. He's still working on it. The thing that I do like is you've seen his play strength get better as he has played more, and from last season to this season, you've seen him get stronger. So that leads me to believe that there is still a little bit more strength that he can add. And I think as he gets to the NFL level, he's going to be a really solid tackle. And in that outside zone scheme, his athleticism is going to be able to shine in that system out there in LA. So Josh Connerly here. This is where I'm going to go with another guy that is making his first appearance in my first round mock drafts, but I'm going to go with Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas. He doesn't remind me of Jamar Chase, because Jamar Chase was such an elite talent at 18 years old, but they're both 6 foot 195. They move around the formation. They pick their matchups and they just win one-on-one matchups. And I think when you're Baltimore right now, you have Rashad Bateman, you have Zay Flowers, you have Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. Derrick Henry, I know, is a bit of a question mark given the fact that I believe he's 31 now. And so we'll kind of have to see longevity wise what he is like from year to year. But I think you go and get a Matthew Golden, and teams have to give these wide receivers one-on-one matchups. Matthew Golden is a nuanced route runner. He has really solid hands. He's big enough and strong enough to win in contested catch situations. He can be moved around the formation, and I think that's going to be very important when you have Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers, who also get moved around the formation a bunch, to have these guys that can go and kind of do a very similar thing here. And so I'm going to go with Matthew Golden. I'm really curious on Baltimore Ravens fans' thoughts on this pick, because there are other needs like Patrick McCarry, Ronnie Stanley are free agents as well. Like defensively, you guys do need secondary, even though I don't love a lot of guys in the secondary at this point. So I'm going to go with Matthew Golden. I think he's the best player on the board that fills a need there for the Baltimore Ravens. Going to do another trade here. So my New England Patriots, they traded back from 4 to 6 and accumulated another third-round pick. It is a little bit of a hefty lift to get all the way up to like 24. That you'd be asking the Minnesota Vikings to move back 14 spots. You'd have to give up this pick 69 and maybe a little bit more. But here, only going up 10 spots, the points work out where you can give up number 38 and number 77, get pick 28, and actually pick 131 back on the points trade chart. And you're actually still giving Detroit more than what they are giving back in terms of like a trade value chart. But with tackles kind of starting to run slim on guys that can come in and be potential players for you in year one, I think that this is going to be well worth it for the Patriots. You still have 2 third-round picks as well to continue to add depth. But this is where I'm going to have Ariante Ursery coming off the board. The Patriots, they went out, they got a big target. Now go get a big tackle here in Ariante Ursery. Very similar to kind of what I said about Kenneth Grant. They just don't make a lot of guys that are this big and move this well. And so I think Ursery, he has some warts. He's a little stiff in the hips. He can get beat by speed around the edge, despite the fact that he is a good athlete. But honestly, I think you get him a little bit more mobile in the hips. You show him how to kind of defeat some long arm techniques and increase his play strength just a little bit. Man, you could really be working with something there. And the fact that they just got Doug Marrone to be the offensive line coach, Josh McDaniels is coming back, and Mike Vrabel is there, and that coaching staff looks to be really rounding into something that could be special. I think you can take a swing at a project like Ariante Ursery at this point, and maybe take him a little bit where he is over, maybe take him a little bit ahead of where he's truly valued, and potentially get the most out of him in that situation. So big help draft here for Drake May and the New England Patriots. Here, the Washington Commanders also have limited draft capital, so I'm going to do another trade actually with this team right here. So we're going to go with pick 33 and 102 for pick 29. And I thought long and hard about who to pick here, because obviously everybody knows, is it Tommy Reese, the new offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, was the offensive coordinator for Jalen Milroe a couple seasons ago at Alabama. And so that is ultimately who I end up going with here. However, there is another quarterback that I've kind of started to keep my eye on, and that is Jackson Dart, the quarterback from Ole Miss. I don't necessarily think he has like true first round buzz, but I think you look at like a early day 2 project that has the arm strength, has the athleticism, has a lot of the traits that you want, and has the production to match. Jackson Dart had a really productive season at Ole Miss. He had some really bad decisions in crucial moments. However, at times I felt like he had to start to force things in some of those games. I'm thinking specifically about the Florida game. One, Trey Harris went down with an injury halfway through that game, and Jackson Dart looked really good against that Florida defense in that first half. And after Trey Harris went out, his production kind of fell off along with the rest of the offense. But I do think that like there is a case that Jackson Dart is a top 3-4 quarterback in this draft class. Now, to me, that says more about the quarterback draft class than Jackson Dart. But I do think, based off of the tape that he's put out and the traits that we've seen, he could make a push up some draft boards and potentially be drafted in a Will Levis-esque scenario. In this case, a Jalen Milroe-esque scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So Jalen Milroe going here to the Cleveland Browns, reuniting with Tommy Reese. That is the last trade of this draft, but kind of round things out, going to go with Jahad Campbell here for the Bills. Linebacker play is something that I feel like they need to improve upon. Matt Milano is getting a little bit older, and Jahad Campbell reminds me a little bit of Tremaine Edmonds, the former Bill linebacker, who really just was really solid, was kind of the enforcer of that defense. And I think Jahad Campbell can come in and be that kind of middle linebacker this Bills defense needs to be more stout against the run and just play fast. And I think he's a really good fit there for Sean McDermott in that defense. Lastly, I'm going to go with an edge rusher here for the Philadelphia Eagles. Not that they really need it, but they have kind of an embarrassment of riches at that point. So this Georgia pipeline is running strong, and it's not going to run strong on this pick. I'm going to go with JT Tuimoloau. This guy, just a phenomenal player in person. Well, to be fair, I've never met him, but from what I've heard, he sounds like a great leader, locker room presence, very stout against the run, especially when you get down into kind of the red zone area. And man, when he turns it loose and decides that he's going to pin his ears back and get upfield, he does a really solid job of putting some good tackles on skates and using speed to power. And so I think that's a really good fit here. You have two of the best interior defensive linemen in the game, in Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Go get just a stud edge rusher who's stout against the run and can really get upfield there in JT Tuimoloau. Last but not least here with the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously Travis Kelce just hasn't been the same this season. So Colson Loveland is going to come in and be that Travis Kelce replacement. And I think that is just a really, really solid fit there for the Kansas City Chiefs. So that is my sixth mock draft of the offseason. Definitely a lot more moving parts in this one. I got a little trade happy at this point and did 5 trades, 3 trades from teams up back into the first round from the early second. But the one thing is, all 3 of the teams that traded back have limited draft capital in this year's draft. And to me, there's a clear separation of like player tiers. So you have like picks 1 through 10 or 12 that are like top end of the first round guys or like true first round picks. And then you have picks like 13 through 24, 23, 24, where it's like these guys are like fringe first rounders. And then to me, that's where like the guys that are truly graded as second rounders start to go off the board is at that point in the draft. And so I think you have a lot of teams that see the 24th through the 32nd pick as not that big of a difference in player that you're going to get it there versus the top of the second. And you get to kind of regain assets by making that move. So
yeah, no, I could see a lot of teams later on in the first half, in the back half of the first round, trading back out, trying to get some more draft capital, and then also too, then they lose that 5th year of control when they're picking in the second round, and in this case, it might actually benefit them because if they pick a player that they're kind of forced to pick and they don't like him, much easier to move on from them
yeah,
at that point. But to your point, I actually don't even think if you scroll up a little bit more on your recent picks, I don't even think it's as spread out. I think you could say like 16 and on, maybe even 18 and on. Like these guys are not first round picks. Like for example, Nick Scorton easily could be replaced with Michael Williams or Shamar Stewart.
yeah,
Those are guys that didn't make it. And if you scroll down, Jack Sawyer, Trey Amos, on the right side, Siobhan Ravel, Don Resurreke, Alik Minor. These are all guys that we've had fringe first round picks, but at the same time, though, absolutely not surprised at all if they do not make
yeah,
first round. That being said, though, I could see a team maybe falling in love with those guys, and they really want to put them in their system and take them in the first round. So that's just going to be really interesting. There's not too many first round grade guys out here, but there's just a lot of really good guys.
yeah.
I think, but our team's going to want to take a chance on them. And that's what's going to be fascinating. And as more information comes out over these next couple of months, it's like we're going to come and figure out who the Texans really fell in love with. Just for example, I know it's like I think it's day 1 or day 2 of the Senior Bowl, and a guy like Gray Zabel, I think, has made so much money so far
Oh
that I
yeah.
just keep seeing his highlights. Like what a great rep, what a great rep. Are the Texans seeing that? Are the Texans somebody that are going to be like, hey, we need an offensive lineman. We really like this guy, not just an offensive line, an interior offensive lineman. And so, and Gray Zabel, where's Gray Zabel ranked at here, even on the PFF board?
41. And so like
41.
he is going to be he had 32.5-inch arms at the Senior Bowl, so he is going to be kind of isolated and kicked into that interior spot, but he has the play strength. Reminds me a little bit of Cody Mock in that sense of like he's just this like really feisty, like physically strong guard, and obviously maybe a little bit of helmet scouting there from North Dakota State, but all in all, like two really solid interior offensive linemen, and also too like Matthew Golden, Alec Eilmaner. Matthew Golden, I think, is the better receiver, but Alec Eilmaner, like you could easily make that swap there as well. Like there are so many guys at this point in the draft that are like, this guy is just a good football player. He doesn't have like an elite trait. Like I think you go up, even like Tyler Warren, he's just kind of a Swiss Army knife. Kelvin Banks, he's a younger former 5-star prospect that played, was a multi-year starter in the SEC. Like at this point, yeah, like 17, 18 and up. You could throw Malachi Starks in there as well. But like, yeah, like to me, those are the guys that I think their names are definitely going to be called. But those last 12 picks, man, it's like it's a crapshoot on
Well,
who's really going to be picked there.
and this might be a controversial take, and Emeka Egbuka's had a great career at Ohio State, but at the same time, though, too, is a team like Denver really going to take? Are they going to want to take a first round pick on a guy who's going to be a slot receiver? You know, he'd be a great compliment and a great fit to
Yeah.
the guy, but they could go find slot receivers later on in the draft. You know,
Yeah.
so that's what's going to be very interesting. Even someone like him, he's probably going to be a first rounder, absolutely. But I could see him falling just a little bit, you know, just
Yeah.
because of the situation, you know. So
Mhm.
that's what's going to be fascinating with this draft, and so it's going to be fun to kind of keep learning and keep seeing how right we're going to be come draft day.
I have a feeling our draft takes, like all other draft takes, can be way off at times. Some of that we end up being right and the teams end up being wrong. Example: Cole Strange, Alex Leatherwood. Like there's a few others, but then there's also like the Jahan Dotson pick where it's like, well, and granted, I guess that one didn't necessarily work out, but I was like, there's no way Jahan Dotson gets taken in the top 50. Like he's a good receiver, and then Washington goes and takes him 16 overall,
Hmm.
or wherever they took him. So,
They traded up for
uh,
him.
yeah, and they traded up for him. So it's like in these draft classes where a lot of people view the talent the same, teams kind of fall in love with guys that they think will be scheme fits and end up potentially overpaying for them. So it's going to be really interesting just to watch what happens in this draft class. I have a feeling we're going to really start to hear some wild names there at the end of this draft, and it'll be fun. Tune in. We will be live for the draft, so early plug. But draft starts in Mobile and it's Senior Bowl week, so let's go ahead while I keep rambling and wrap this one up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this mock draft. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we will see you guys next time.